So Rainbow Circle put on educational camps. Now these camps had subject matters. They were Beltane, they were children's camps, they were healing camps, astrology camps, music and dance camps, all sorts of different camps, celebration of life camps. Craft, yes, green, what do we call it? Ancient Crafts and Green Futures camp, yes. Amazing. And that was a political and craft camp. That was an interesting combination, because the crafts people were not very political, and the political people were not very craft-wise. And to bring them together was quite interesting. And what generally would happen on those camps was that the political stuff would be in the morning and the craft stuff would be in the afternoon. And by the time we'd gone through 2 or 3 days, people would going, but I want some political stuff in the afternoon. I want some craft stuff in the morning. So that they didn't have to take part in the other half of it. But actually, they're very, very intertwined, and it was an amazing concept. And that was from Brig. Brig started that camp. So where were we? Back to yes, back to the camps and their subject matter. Now, for me, it wasn't just the subject matter. In fact, I always used to say that the subject matter was just bait. Subject matter was to draw the people in, and once you got them there, they had to learn to live on the land. They took part in amazing evening fire circles and chanting sessions and communal food and all sorts of different experiences that they may not have thought they were letting themselves in for. But for me, that was a very large part of it. And another part of it, which was also political part, if you like, was the working in circles. It was incredibly important that all our meetings were circular. And many, many people had not come across that concept before at all. And it changed the whole sort of attitude and being of people when they can't dominate the conversation because there's a stick going around the circle. Mind you, when they got the stick, quite often that was a different story. But then that was when the person who was holding the energy for that circular meeting had to be on the case and had to be able somehow or other to get them to pass the stick on. That often did happen. And it wasn't just people putting forward their ideas and concepts and how they'd like things to be. It was people would start telling their life history with the stick in their hand, and you'd go, and what about so and so? Oh dear. Okay. And then the other aspect of it was that many of the people who came to facilitate on these camps were not very experienced in their gift to the world, one would say, because I think that when you have a subject that you want to share, that is your gift to the community. But they weren't experienced in doing it, and they actually gained their feet, if you like. They gained their wings, would you say?
They learned their craft.
They learned their craft, indeed. They learned how to put their information, their energy, their insights across to a group of people. And that is a huge learning. And it's really crucial if you want to actually do some teaching at some point. So there were all these different aspects to the camps, which were advertised as being educational camps. In the end, we actually did. Started to put on the leaflets. I can't remember how long it took us to do this. Maybe only a year or so. But we used to put on the leaflets that we would have campfires and that we would have music. And quite often we would have a band come in at the end of the week. Not for the astrology camp, because we always did the astrology play, which was initially with a woman called Carol did it first, and then Sherry, and then Suze. And the play was so traditional at the end of the astrology camp. So we never had a band then, but at the end of the other camps, we did sometimes have bands. And lo and behold, we had to pay them. And then the people who were working all through the summer on the site crew, for example, they started to be a bit sort of iffy about the fact that we were paying these guys to come and do their gig. And they did get a bung at the end of the season from Sid, and I never knew about that either, so I actually did think they were working for nothing. But they weren't working for much. And these guys who came and did one evening's gig would get probably as much as they did for the whole season. And so that sort of got voted out, so it didn't happen anymore. But, you know, there are things that, that you have to, where you have to compromise. Because I know that Sid, when he took Rainbow 2000, he always had a really good tradesman who sold amazing stuff. And then he would have entertainment of some sort, and often would culminate in a band or something at the end of the week. And it helped people enjoy themselves. And if they enjoy themselves, they come again. So, it wasn't just all sort of politics and all astrology or healing or anything. It was the whole experience that you want people to enjoy, not just to absorb information, It's important. Anyway, just remembered that I haven't actually mentioned about, we're talking about Flaxley, and I haven't mentioned the fact that when the split happened, Sid and the hierarchy, if you like, I think through Derek Godwin, got a site further on down Rodley Road from Derek's place. Derek's place wasn't usable anymore after the foot and mouth disease, because it had been a place of the burning pits, and it was like we couldn't even think of going back there. But they went further on down that road, and they have a beautiful site there, which is where it still all takes place. So that area of the Forest of Dean became very focal and very important in the Rainbow development. And part of the reason for this was that in, I think it was probably 1990, we went to Blackthorn Farm, or maybe 89 actually, we went to Blackthorn Farm, and Jules rented the bungalow there, where of course her and her family, including Sid, lived, and that became the focus of energy. There were barns there we could store equipment in, and the guy who owned the house, the farm, wasn't a farmer. He had a few grazing animals, I think, but he wasn't much of a farmer. And he basically had a nice house and a lot of land and some barns and sheds and a bungalow. And it all started to revolve. The whole of the Rainbow Circle scene at that point started to revolve around Sid. And then he started the Forest Fair. Now, I can't remember whether it started in 1990 or 91, but I suspect it was 91. And the Forest Fair was, as it says, a forest fair. It had a huge number of stalls. It was completely staffed and put on by the travelling scene. Rainbow Circle was part of it. I mean, I used to organise the stalls, and one of the ones I was on the gate, which wasn't a very good experience. I wouldn't do that again. On the gate with travellers trying to come in, and you try not to let them in because Sid was quite generous. He would have let them in for, 20 quid a family or something like this, or even less than that. But they were adamant, they were part of the scene and they were going to come in for free. And it was like quite difficult. But anyway, the Forest Fair was a great success until the third one, when there was a lot of complaints about the music. And it got shut down, I think, because the music was too loud, and the people who came with their sort of rave machines that were only little tiny things. You can't believe how small they were. It wasn't a great big trip that you could say, oh, well, no, you can't come in with that. It was like something was almost under the seat. And they lasted out. And of course, if they're on top of a little rise, which they could have been, there was various little rises around the place, it just went out everywhere. And lots of people around and about complained. It's only one weekend, for goodness sake, They should live near Glastonbury Festival. Anyway, yeah. So that closed down in, I think it was 93. But then, when it came to the split in the Rainbow Circle and the dividing up of the tat, Sid maintained absolutely that all the money for the Rainbow Circle dome covers and some of the other equipment had been actually Forest Fair money. It wasn't anything to do with Rainbow Circle, really. It was his.